The first talk is by Eric. Before I feel something. Go ahead.
For all the things I've done in my life, that's the sum total of the introduction. That's okay. I'm giving you a hard time. So, right, can't take myself seriously. So, welcome to this session. I'm happy to share with you work that we're doing that's been part of a research activity that started several years ago, beginning with the prospect that, again, we talked about this yesterday, but some of you have also engaged in media making, teachers and with teacher and student combinations creating interactive digital media to teach mathematics. My name is Eric Hamilton. This particular project is funded by a number of sources. I'll get to those in just a moment. The slides you can get off the QR code, and this represents actually the work of a number of people. My colleague Israel Ramirez from Clark County School District in Las Vegas will be speaking, and then Hiro Kato is also in the audience, who's in our team. So our sponsors, just to do the big call out, Microsoft Research was actually involved at the very beginning of some of this funding. I'm at Pepperdine, and Pepperdine has put a large amount of money. NSF has been our main support, and as for those of you who were here yesterday during the short talk, the Fulbright program in the U.S. State Department has also been a significant contributor to the work. And in fact, the State Department contributes to the parallel work that we do in Africa. I'm going to show you 1 or 2 minutes from a video, not the one that we showed yesterday, but as a precursor to the rest of the presentation, just to give you a little sense of what we're doing. It is a video from outside of Accra, Ghana from this past summer. And although it's based in Ghana, it's all part of this, it's all in the same research milkshake. It's all the same data tools and so on. And where is Moses? Are you here, Moses? Oh, Moses is the narrator of this, and he's also on our team. Some of you might be familiar with the African Institute for Mathematical Sciences. Neil Turok from the Perimeter Institute has been collaborating with us. These are Fujitsu and Surface Pros. This is a 8 or 9 minute video. We're going to watch the first minute or so.
The answer to the second riddle might surprise you. It is what has been happening this past week when hungry students and teachers in a mathematics class being told it's time for lunch. These students and teachers seem oblivious to the announcement that lunch is ready. They are too wrapped up in them, which is to produce videos to teach and explain mathematics. The state of being fully absorbed that you lose track of time is often called being from opening some office and teaching activities. What keeps these students and teachers so engaged and learning? What is the magic? The magic is in the teachers themselves, it is in the students themselves, it is in their collaboration from the mathematics they are learning and teaching.
So we stumbled across something in actually a Department of Education precursor grant, and that was when we were working on what we considered a very sexy and exciting technology-based platform for classroom use. We discovered that the technology was not the big issue. The big issue was what was happening to teachers when they had to do a chore to make the technology work. The chore was that they had to make some videos. This was back in the days of Camtasia 3.0 and when video making was just in its entree. What we discovered is that aspects of teacher personality especially mathematics, was being recruited and evoked in very powerful ways. I'd been at the National Science Foundation, signed out tens and hundreds of millions of dollars over a number of years for research and professional development. And before my very eyes, I was watching teachers change the way we had been spending large sums of the public treasury to find out, to discover. Teachers, in creating videos, were practicing deep immersion in their subject area, one of the main objectives we had in professional development for teachers. They were completely absorbed. They were taking much more care to be coherent and clear in their presentations and creating persistent artifacts. A persistent artifact of a video is you put more work into it. And so we wound up discovering that a lot of the dynamics, the cognitive dynamics associated with powerful mathematical cognition flowed naturally out of the process of media making. Media making that you just saw in this group then grew in our projects to entail not only what teachers were doing, which altered their sense of professionalism, but altered their capacities and their roles in functioning with students. Teachers wound up not having enough time to do the things that they wanted to do, and we wound up getting students involved with them. And the student-teacher collaboration teams changed the way students looked at themselves, the way teachers looked at the students, the way students looked at the teachers, and the way they all looked at mathematics. And especially mathematics, if you look at it from an assessment standpoint, was no longer something that you did to get ready for a test if you were a student. It's something that you did to explain to someone else. Those are two very different processes and activate very different neural regions in learning. So media making was sort of the centerpiece that allowed us to understand conditions of engagement. The basketball video you saw, and that we won't have time to show later in this session, involved what we call group flow. If you could get a whole group of individuals in a classroom or in this case in a basketball setting, to function in congress, in confluence and convergence at the full use of their capacities at the very outer edge of their ability, you had something quite magical taking place. So we started discovering, and this to me was pretty magical because I'm not especially a creative person, discovering that people who are not creative or who are not, do not look at themselves as being creative, are creative, that they have capacities and that should be honored. And you could blend that and you could bind it with mathematical thinking. And you could get really kick-butt mathematical thinking. You could get the good stuff. You could get the really challenging stuff through media making. In this project, though, our interest, we started thinking about ways to combine. Now, to make the media making work in mathematics, you need symbolic representation. You need a natural way to connect representational systems, symbol systems, the intuition, the naturalness, the organic sense of being able to communicate with mathematical symbols. So we combined using the pen and the stylus with the creating the videos. So that's great. But we started doing some other things. We saw Richard Anderson's talk this morning. You're familiar with Dino. I've been working in this space. I actually, in 1990, patented software that would let teachers see exactly what a student was doing using handwriting. I have been craving all of my life. I've never been in a math class for the last 30 years without either experiencing or imagining what it would be like to experience being able to watch what every student in my class was doing with pen and pencil. So to do that, though, you need time in the class. That was the innovation of classroom flipping. The thing about flipping wasn't so much watching the video ahead of time, it was that you had time in class to actually interact with students. So if we combine the pen, we combine the media making, which also, by the way, provided videos for flipping for the night before, with this capacity like Dino or other companies like SmartSync or variations of Classroom Presenter, if you could combine that so that the teacher can see exactly what the student is doing at any given time in a classroom, you could start to create and operationalize a very different classroom reality where there's constant flow back and forth between the teacher electronically at a much higher bandwidth than anything I could have ever otherwise imagined. Well, I'm also in an area where we do a lot of work with artificial avatars and agents. And there's so much work successfully that's been taking place in FAQ systems, language parsers, and so on. So we've built those, or we are building those, we have built those into our system. So what we are now trying to do is combine flipping with use of natural language avatars. So you can ask a question, what is Kramer's rule? We're going to be doing some matrices a little bit later. And have an avatar just pop up and give you an answer to that. So your little own personal FAQ animated figure, you have that with the capacity for a teacher to interact with you at any time. Combine that with the capacity for peers to interact with you. Combine that with the fact that you have ownership over the interactive video material, all enabled in mathematics by the magic of, maybe I even have one in my pocket, by the magic of a pen. So the pen-based computing became entree to what we consider to be a significant contributor to understanding what future classroom ecologies can look like. What we envision is rapid movement back and forth, rapid bandwidth, where big ideas about mathematics are transported back and forth, and where our big vision falls in the domain of learner engagement. Our overall point of view is that when people are engaged, they learn. So having come from a context in which math wars, controversies about pedagogy have squandered public trust and have squandered public dollars, we're not so concerned about what pedagogy you use at any given time. We're interested in capacitizing teachers to use any pedagogy depending on the circumstances and depending on a very different sphere of activity. So if you think about, it's not a good comparison because I love baseball, but if you think about the level of activity between baseball and what takes place in a soccer game, where everyone's moving, there's a whole lot more physical activity. Think about it as a whole lot more mathematical activity that takes place on the playing field. So these are the different tools that we use when we create what we call an ensemble. The last one I haven't mentioned is low-cost mobile devices. We send devices home with students for media playback. And as I mentioned, the entree to the entire thing is pen-based computing. And that's what originally I started using in developing software that allowed teachers and students to see what each other was doing. So that's the entree that is critical. But I will say this also, I'm sorry. If you take these 6 and you look at each one relating to the other, you'll see the whole point of the ensemble is that every technology and every approach activates some higher power of the other 5. So each of the 5 makes the others, each of the 6 makes the other 5 more powerful, and that's how we create the synergy of the ensemble. So our vision is deep immersion, flow and learning, opportunities to understand teacher and student creativity, imagination and agency, and what we call a science of learner engagement. Now, I'd love to go into this last point in a little bit more detail because we're looking in a classroom setting, in an educational setting, at what we call an ensemble of tools. But we're also looking beneath the surface at an ensemble of neural activation patterns associated with the neural regions and the competencies that are recruited by each of these technologies. So, for example, if you're in a classroom flipping environment where kids can help each other, but if you help someone do something that's a difficult task for them, your understanding of that task deepens, their understanding of that task deepens, and there's a social connection that we don't otherwise build into our learning experiences. Help seeking and help giving activate different neural regions. Creativity activates different neural regions than normal classroom activity. Creating something, having particular agency, activates neural functionality. Storytelling narratives, when you create a video, activates a different neural functionality. So part of our work in This research in understanding a science of learner engagement is to create not only an ensemble of tools that you see in the classroom, but to understand a neural ensemble of factors that create deep immersion and deep connection with the subject area. So our core research areas: immersion, flow, and creativity, natural language dialogue, and again, I won't get into this because I want to have my colleague Israel, who's actually working in the project as a teacher, share some of his experience with it. It's a conference presentation. It's obligatory to give research questions. I'll mention these briefly. We're experimenting with different tools put together. Does that really foster effective experience in learning? We have a conjecture that when you're deeply immersed, when you're deeply engaged, you learn. So we need to translate that conjecture that the field has been making for many years into findings about learning. And these others are intermediate, but we're also trying to understand what it means to have many tools and then combine them in ways that are intelligently interactive. All right. I mentioned that Israel is at one of our schools. He's at Spring Valley High School in Las Vegas. We'll hear from him in just a moment. Then we have another school in Long Beach. The original work that we did involved classroom workshops that would be held on Saturdays in the summer. Now we're actually in schools. And then, as you inferred from the opening video, and if you were here yesterday during the short talk, we have a number of sites in sub-Saharan Africa. We're collecting a lot of data. Most of it's qualitative. We have teachers and students give structured daily reflections. We do interviews up the wazoo. We have hundreds of those. Their artifacts, the actual videos that they make, for example, are important. And beginning next year, we'll be able to look at test score differences, but the kinds of things that we're interested in really are not reflected well in test scores. So some of our findings across the board. The whole point of that opening video was, what is this? These are people who are hungry, but they're too wrapped up to do anything about it. That to me that's what wins in our classrooms. If you're engaged, you win. If you're disengaged, you lose. So we find uniformly that we're able to induce student flow and teacher flow. In hundreds of cases, in hundreds of interviews, we've detected this and people have reported this. We also unwaveringly report and find teachers reporting increased personal creativity, which is, we think that's a good thing. In the US especially, teachers their status is low compared to their status in other countries. And anything that builds a sense of professionalism, including autonomy, imagination, creativity, is a good thing. And one of the main factors associated with difficulties in US educational mathematics education, is a lack of coherence in mathematical experience. Kids do not experience mathematics coherently. When you edit a video, you have to be coherent. When you create a story, you have to be coherent. So there's this benign coercion of and around one of the most important deficiencies in mathematics learning and education. And as I mentioned before, some of the identity shifts. It's difficult to imagine how we bring this into experience of everyday teachers, but now NSF is supporting us working at a large scale in classrooms. The real difficulty is everyday teachers, because we've been blessed with some spectacular teachers, including my colleague Israel Ramirez, who inspires all of us, and he's created a short video. He's not going to show all of it, but of some of his experience.
Morning, everybody. Israel Ramirez. And so here we would like to present you an example of what is going on in the classroom environment in Las Vegas Spring Valley High School. Basically what's going on is a lot of pen and touch technology is being used by the students. Here I'm just going to summarize what's going on. Students are receiving their files already, which they can go and open those files. there's, now they start working on with the pen and touch technology. Here, we see examples of the students working with the matrix operations. This is really helpful for me because it's real-time observations that I'm making. What we call it there, it's just critical thinking observations. What I ask the students to write critical thinking observations. You write down what you see, you write down what you know, so that way you make it simple. Because students, they really, sometimes they don't like to write their work, they don't like to share their work. This is our mission statement at Spring Valley High School, and so we believe in independent learning, where students, they do their own research in class, using the technology that we provide to them. And so it's kind of like a centered learning environment where I'm just not like facilitating, exactly what they need to be able to produce. Notice right here, students are just writing linear equations. And so the video goes on with the pen and touch technology, how important it is. And also they have multiple applications where they can use calculators, other applications that they're included. Students right here, they're saving their work so that way they can send it to me on a inline file. Right here you can see a real time, students working with the pen and touch technology while they're doing the work. I'm able to assist and to support their understanding. And then at the same time, I'm recording everything they do so that way when I have to do some next lesson planning, I can see exactly what they're missing out. Again here, students are just using pen and touch technology, which it really helps a lot in the classroom environment because the students get engaged into the writing aspect of the mathematics. We want the students to be fluent in mathematics, not only to write and read, but also to speak the language. And so I challenge the students on a daily basis. I notice about by motivating the students, you got it right away they can see that they get it right instead of me waiting a couple of days to give them, their input. But and the challenge is that they need to justify, their solutions. It's not just give me the final solution, but now I want you to justify the solutions. So students with using the pen and touch technology, they can do it. I can visualize it on my computer screen right away. I'm checking for understanding throughout the whole entire period. And notice about the student, she's going at it, checking that finding the inverse of this matrix is the one. And so she got it right. So I tell them, I'm proud of you. And then sometimes the students, they don't have the confidence to continue writing, so they erase the word. I can see it right away. Pen and touch technology allows me to do that, and then I motivate them again. You're doing a great job, just keep it up. Keep writing, keep writing. If you make technical mistakes, we don't care about making technical mistakes. As long as we can improve the writing, it should be fine. But that's just an example of what it's going on in the classroom environment using pen and touch technology.
Israel, thank you. We're going to, we only have a short time to share some of this. What Israel shared so far is the fact that with the flipping environment, you have much more time in the classroom to have this kind of interaction and, the soccer metaphor versus baseball, instead of people standing around while the action is taking place between the pitcher and the batter, and then they get called on or the ball comes to them. Everyone is moving all the time. And that's the kind of thing we're doing here. Next year, you should be seeing some tracking of the students helping each other, which we don't have much on that. You should see the avatars. We have all the software and the FAQs set up, but we haven't operationalized it with the screen sharing. So we're building this ensemble and testing how it works. I will say, listening to some of the presentations over the last couple of days, if you have any interest in being, if you have tablets, you're interested in some kind of connection to this kind of work, we're interested in sharing data and collecting data with you and collaborating and sharing insight. But our interest really is in building ecosystems that focus on imagination, teacher and student generated content, use of mobile devices, and in general, visible cognition through this kind of arrangement that Israel has shared. So thank you very much. You've been engaged, even though you haven't been able to do a lot of work yourself, but much appreciated. Thank you.
Yes. So you focused on math, but can you extrapolate this, because math is really the basis of everything, whether it's dance, art, music, you know, it permeates everything. And so as a foundation, it seems focusing on just that you've seen students become more creative in other disciplines, transdisciplinary.
Physics teacher. Israel's also a physics teacher. And then we are working with people. My fields of love are history and English, although I'm a mathematics educator and computers. We originally do this work in computer science. And what's been especially exciting is to be part of the WIPTTE community, because math actually requires the pen and the touch, or at least the pen, and now the touch has really been a great addition. So yeah, we get this question all the time. NSF's money comes in the form of math and science, and that's my field, but a lot of excitement. And especially also, by the way, in English learning. When we do this overseas in Africa, where English is a second language, the whole idea of code switching becomes a very big deal when students are generating their own representations, doing it in different language, in English and their vernacular is a very powerful process.
Eric, can I just mention something? In the class, I just showed you the videos where they show the critical thinking observations, meaning the work. But then I show a video where I have the students writing, technical writing, mathematical technical writing, which allows them to describe in written terms, exactly what the problem is all about, formal definitions, informal definitions. How do you solve the problem? Writing, technical writing, also it really helps the students, to enhance their writing skills in English terms, not in mathematical terms anymore, but now they're practicing with English explaining the problem. So it really helps in other fields as well.
This is aligning completely with the work the school is doing. We're getting more and more with, for example, we go on field trips, and so there's a video of that and swaying and like this. I need to hear more of this, and the math is right now, like all the years I've taught, collaborating, mentoring, and when they mentor, they learn together. It's right down the
Having your high school students teaching middle school.
Yes.
This is incredibly powerful.
Very powerful.
And it changes the way the brain wiring assimilates the knowledge. So eric.hamilton at pepperdine.edu.
What kind of devices do you
It's a big question, but we generally use HP tablets, Fujitsu tablets, and mostly Surface Pros. But we also do a lot with Wacom boards. So we have teachers using Macintoshes. In computer lab settings, it's usually a Windows 8, and it's either a tablet or it's connected to a Wacom board, and we buy a lot of Wacom boards. Where's Sierra? I just want to make sure she hears once again that we buy a lot of Wacom boards. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.